What's going on, team? It's Josh. It is 4:53 a.m. on a Monday. Hey, so over the past couple of days, I had the opportunity to visit Fort Leavenworth, which was pretty awesome. Got to speak at the Army Leader Exchange, which was a great opportunity. And I also had the opportunity to go over and talk to some of the students over at SAMS, which was great. But they were in the middle of an exercise, didn't have all the free time, so I didn't get to see everybody that I wanted to. And over the course of the week, I had several of the teammates there, several of the students that reached out that said, "Hey, do you have any notes from your talk?" I was talking about being a leader, being a planner, and getting back out to the force. So instead of just going through and typing up an article to give those tips, I thought maybe I would just record a couple of videos here over the next few days to give you those tips. So I'm going to start with one today, and then I'll keep cranking through the week. Now, these tips don't just apply to SAMS planners. That's kind of the intended audience. But the old joke that we have in my headquarters is that it doesn't matter what your branch is, doesn't matter where you're trained. If you graduated from CGSC or distance learning or whatever, and you're a major, then you're a planner. If you're not a doer, if you're not an operator, then you're a planner. So these tips will help you out too. So here goes. Okay, tip number one, do work. So regardless of who you are or what position you're going into, you are going to be expected to make an output, right? Coming out of SAMS, you're going to be put into a tough planner position. Same goes for CGSC coming out of Fort Leavenworth. You're going to be put into either a division or a core staff that's getting ready for a warfighter. They're getting ready for a deployment, and everybody is going to look to you to be the person who can roll up their sleeves, to lead the team, put hands on keyboard, and when needed, to go ahead and crank through a product. Now, one thing on that one. Doing work does not equate to doing all the work. What I'm not telling you to do is get out there and try to drive every single interaction to try to create each product. That's not it. Doing good work means that you're doing tough stuff when it matters, but you're also out in the lead, enabling your team, getting after it, and letting those folks do their jobs as well. All right, tip number two is another simple one, and it's something that's harder to do in application, and that's to know doctrine, right? So again, coming out of your previous assignment, you probably knew a bit of doctrine, you probably knew the info that was specific to your branch, and wherever you are getting your current education, be it CGSC or distance learning or SAMS, you got to know a little bit more doctrine. But that doctrine continues to evolve. Just now you see publications of new versions of a bunch doctrine, 3.0, 6.0, etc. So you've got to be up to date and you've got to be current on those documents. As opposed to your life as a captain, as an assistant S3 or whatever, an assistant S2 at a brigade level, where you were only expected to know a little bit of that doctrine. Now folks will come to you and they will expect you to know all of the doctrine, how it meshes together, and that you're up to date on the newest concepts. What's the difference in the new 3.0, and how does command and control differ from what was previously the warfighting function of mission command? What is multi-domain operations, and how does that concept apply to the warfighter that we're doing right now? So you got to know doctrine, you got to stay up to date, and you've got to be the person that sees how all of those pieces fit together.
Hello.
Hey, so a follow-up on tip number 2, right? So tip 2, know doctrine. So I'd say tip 2 alpha is to know the military decision-making process, which is part of doctrine, to know the joint planning process, and really as a leader in any team that's working its way through, be it on a division or a corps staff, or even all the way down at a battalion or brigade level, your role in the MDMP is to be the person that sees the logic and that connects the dots between the steps. I think often as leaders we get stuck where it's just producing a briefing to get in front of the commander, and we go from rehearsal to rehearsal to brief without really thinking about the logical steps. But mastery of the military decision-making process goes beyond that, right? It's seeing those continuities between the steps that makes for a richer product, right? So when you identify an information requirement all the way down in mission analysis, it either works its way through and you figure out an answer to that question, or it goes forward with PIR to find an answer when you go into execution. And just on a side note, remember that the MDMP, although is commander driven and you're very focused on your commander, it's not just about your commander. The MDMP is also about the learning that it creates amongst the staff and among subordinate organizations. So don't forget that you've got to share, across the organization and down to your subordinates as well, to really empower them for them to gain understanding. All right, tip number 3 for you. So it sounds simple, but in reality, on a staff, it's harder than you think it is. And that's to be a leader. So we talk about leadership, it's something we assume is just implied, but often on a variety of staffs, on operational planning teams, you see folks who don't quite understand what that means. They don't quite understand what it means to lead an operational planning team or to lead a joint planning group. So just a couple of tips that I've seen to be successful. So one of the best analogies that I ever heard while I was at SAMS, we had a guest speaker who came in, and he described leading an operational planning team. One of the best analogies that I ever heard on the topic came from a speaker who came into SAMS while I was a student there. He described being an OPT leader, an operational planning team leader, like being a lifeguard while everyone else is swimming laps in a pool. All right, so there's the diagram. There's my little swimming pool, my little swim lanes. There's the G1, the G2, the G3, the G4. And where are you supposed to be in this whole thing? Right there, not in the swimming pool. So that's the primary place that you are. And the message is that as soon as you get into the pool, as soon as you get in and start doing the work of the 1 or the 4, you can't see everyone at that point. You can't make sure folks are staying in their lanes, that they're hitting their marks, they're getting the right times. So you've got to stay outside of the pool for the most part. And again, this one can be kind of vague. So what exactly does it mean to be outside of the pool and providing the right leadership to those other folks? Well, it's all about things like setting the right micro timeline to make sure you're getting the right people in the right place to have the right sessions when they need to occur to make a good product. That's not just the rehearsal for the mission analysis brief, but making sure that you've got a cross-functional team ready to look at enemy courses of action, so it's not just G2 analysis. It's about making sure that you have the commander's guidance captured and that you're referencing it so you're not going against his guidance somewhere later down the road in course of action development. It's about making sure you have the right tools in place, the right maps, the right overlays, the right graphics, the right shells at the right time. But going back to tip number one, you've still got to be ready to do work. You've got to be ready to jump into the pool, to bail someone out, to put your hands on the keyboards and create product if need be. You've got to be deep enough in the information that it's being presented from across the staff that you still see that logical thread, that you can still pull those key pieces together and clearly articulate that back to the commander. All right, what's up guys? Good morning. Hey, so last tip for you on being a successful operational planning team leader or an S3 or an XO or a joint planning group leader. Number 4, and that's to be an effective communicator. So again, sounds easy, right? This is a thing that we've been working on our entire time in the Army, but often as an operational planning team leader, we get trapped way down into the details, down into the weeds, and we have trouble judging the key information that we're trying to portray and who we're trying to portray that to, right? We're communicating up to our commander, to our higher headquarters. We're communicating down to our subordinates, to the subordinate commanders, to their staffs, and then we're communicating left and right internally to our staff and to adjacent units. So there are different types of communications that you need with each of those audiences. You can't go into the same level of detail right off the bat with your commander that you do with your staff. You have to give that individual the right information in a method that is effective for them to receive it so that they can understand, they can see those key continuities, and they can make a decision. Now, that's not to say that you don't bring your commander into the details, but you've got to make sure you have the information set up appropriately for them. There are a variety of different ways that you're going to be required to communicate. One of the ones that we all hate, but we all still use, is PowerPoint. It's got a picture. The picture shows the relationship between things, and then there's a narrative that goes with it that describes the actions. The PowerPoint slides have to be able to walk, and they have to be able to communicate without you there. The next form of communication you have to be able to use is written communication. You have to be able to write short, concise emails, effective point papers, all the way into well-written orders that are concise, that subordinates can understand and quickly transition into action. Final form of communication that you've got to be able to use effectively is verbal communication. You've got to be able to talk face-to-face. You've got to be able to give the elevator pitch of your problem statement, get the right decisions out of that decision maker, and get back into action. Additionally, you've got to be able to use verbal communication with your team. You've got to clearly articulate suspenses, clearly articulate tasks, and make sure that they understand what you're trying to convey to them. Okay, team, that's it for this week on being an effective operational planning team leader. Hope that this has been something that you can use, you can put into play. Are there other tips out there? There absolutely are. Please leave them in the comments and continue this conversation. Thanks again. Have a good week.